Okay, we're gonna get started. It's 6:08 PM on May 13th. Welcome to the May 2024 meeting of Manhattan Community Board One's Land Use, Zoning and Economic Development Committee. I'm Patrick Cannell, Chair of the committee. Laura Starr may be joining us online, but I think she had another commitment tonight. And Tammy Meltzer, Chair of CD1, is here with me. We have one item and one item only on the agenda tonight, but it's a biggie. So we're gonna start it over to our friend at the Department of City Planning to give us a presentation of the mayor's City of Yes initiative. This is the third big zoning text amendment, zoning for housing opportunity. And it's built to be a little bit just as big, if not more complicated than economic development that we just went through. So everyone's gonna pay attention. It's certified. You guys are certified when our stuff's due. But we are on the 60-day clock. But here's the plan for tonight. We're not coming up with a resolution. We're here to listen, absorb, ask some, initial questions. Zach Balmer, our district manager, is keeping track of committee member questions, which we're going to detail in a spreadsheet to DCP so that we're able to keep track of them as well as keep track of the responses in written form. And we have engaged again for this opportunity, George James of George James and Associates as our land use consultant for this application. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the DCP.
Great. I think by this point I've met almost all of you, but if not, my name is Matt Gutierrez. I'm the borough planner for CD1. We're joined online by Ezra Moser, who's the team leader for the Central Business Districts team at our office in Manhattan. And we're joined by John Mangian. We're lucky to have him. He's the director of our housing division. And so he has a wealth of knowledge on everything CHO related. So we're really lucky to have you here with us. Do we have the?
I'm sure I do. I will find it. Just please confirm it's Eric Anderson, Joel Scalato, or Richard DeKenna, part of the group. Who needs to move to the first conference.
No.
Eric Anderson is not.
Tammy, it's already up under share. Hit
Richard
share.
Dyke.
I missed it.
And
Richard Dykema, and there was a third name. But it's fine. Presentation.
I'm just moving over. Oh, okay. Please,
It's under, just hit share.
I did. Which one is that? It's the Logi?
It is.
Not there. I don't find it. Just give me 1 sec. Just give me 1 sec to find the presentation charts here.
Yeah.
Come here. This way. Okay, how's that?
Perfect. We also have a clip.
Thank you, Darren.
We'll give you the clicker, I will not guarantee it's perfection.
Okay.
If it doesn't work right, then I will be the.
Sure. Okay, perfect, yeah, thanks. So yes, so City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, or CHO, is a very ambitious set of proposals. And so, some of which are more relevant to CD1 than others, so we tailored this to try to be as relevant to you guys as possible, but as with past presentations like CEO, we can zoom into the appendix slides for any other additional information on, low density proposals for whatever reason. So that's all there. You can review later on, but we're going to focus on high density and medium density areas today. And as with previous presentations, we'd love to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. And as Patrick, you just alluded to, it'd be really great to compile and collate your questions after the fact, so that we make sure that we get you all the answers you need in the coming weeks. Great.
Cool, it worked.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
fantastic.
I am,
We're very excited to talk to you about housing opportunity today. And it's, really has the aim of allowing for equitable housing development across the city. These changes will enable a little bit more housing in every neighborhood by removing key barriers to housing growth. So, I mean, I don't need to state the obvious for you. I mean, everyone here is well aware of the housing crisis in New York City. The vacancy rate for rental apartments is historically low at only 1.4%, far below a healthy vacancy rate that would provide New Yorkers with housing options. In Manhattan, the vacancy rate is 2.33%, down from 10% in 2021. Because our housing demand far exceeds our housing supply, over half of New Yorkers who are renting are rent burdened, meaning that they spend over 30% of their monthly income on rent. And not having enough homes is also a direct result or cause of homelessness. Each night in 2023, over 92,000 homeless New Yorkers slept in shelters, and this included 33,000 homeless children. So New York City is not building enough housing to meet our needs. The chart on top, and I know written on the screen is probably terribly small for folks, but it shows how housing production over time has declined. And most of the city's housing was created in the first half of the 20th century. And since that time, it's fallen dramatically. And that's in part because of zoning and how it's become increasingly restrictive since 1961. At the same time that housing production has decreased, the demand for housing has increased. And there are a number of reasons for this. For example, households today are smaller than they used to be, meaning that the same amount of people are taking up more space. And the second chart below shows how we stack up against other major metros in the US between 2013 and 2022. And you can see that we're lagging behind many other cities. So recent housing production that has occurred has been limited to only a few neighborhoods. In 2023, 10 community districts produced as much housing as the other 49 combined. When some areas stop producing housing, this puts disproportionate pressure on other neighborhoods. Tammy, the first snag.
here. Aim to-
Oh,
Okay, I gotcha.
Did you try aiming your atmosphere?
I gotcha. I clicked.
okay, awesome, thank you. So we're just gonna go over kind of an overview of the main components of the proposal. So this text amendment will be the biggest pro-housing change that DCP has ever undertaken and would touch virtually every part of New York City. As I previously mentioned, we're gonna dive into the deepest into proposals that are relevant here. So we'll begin with medium and high density proposals. The most notable change in these districts is the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP, which would allow bigger buildings for affordable housing in every medium and high density zoning district. And I'll also go over some updates that are happening to mandatory inclusionary housing, or MIH. Then we'll cover citywide proposals. So these would enable more conversions of non-residential buildings to housing, more shared and small apartments, height limited infill in large residential campuses, as well as things like removing residential parking mandates, which are making housing more expensive. And we'll conclude with a brief overview of low density proposals. And obviously these don't have direct impacts on CD1 and some of the others, so we can go into those in as much depth as you guys would like. So we'll allow you to steer the conversation when it goes to that. But just to give you a little bit of a preview, those proposals are meant to facilitate more missing middle housing. And it would also allow help homeowners by allowing them to build accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and granting them greater flexibility to alter their homes. So let's dive into medium and high density. So the proposal introduces the Universal Affordability Preference, or UAP. It would allow apartment buildings to be 20% larger, so long as the extra space is occupied by permanently affordable housing, including supportive housing. UAP is modeled after existing rules that allow bigger buildings for affordable senior housing in certain neighborhoods, and this is sometimes referred to as the AIRS program. UAP would allow incremental housing growth in neighborhoods and encourage affordable housing throughout the city rather than concentrating it in a few neighborhoods. The map on the right shows where UAP would apply, namely medium and high density, or R6 through R10 districts, or their equivalents. Today, most medium and high density districts allow, like I said, affordable senior housing to be about 20% larger than other buildings. UAP would expand this framework to all forms of affordable and supportive housing, and not just for seniors, making it easier to build affordable housing in every medium and high density district. In districts that don't already have this senior housing preference, this proposal would also create a 20% bump in FAR for affordable and supportive housing. Some districts would also receive height increases so that it's actually feasible for UAP buildings to fit the allowed square footage. Great. So this is a rendering of how UAP would play out. So without UAP, the image on the left, the building is built according to the base FAR for market rate housing. And the result of this is an 8-story apartment building. With UAP, the image on the right, the building can be about 20% bigger, which for this example translates to approximately 2 stories. So as long as the extra space is permanently this extra space is permanently affordable. And so now I'm going to walk through a slightly more specific example of an UAP scenario. So let's say a developer has a vacant site in an R6 district and plans to build a mixed income building. The yellow portion of this drawing shows the additional floor area that a developer can build if they were to include affordable housing. The affordable housing would be distributed throughout the building. So it's not just concentrated in that yellow area. That's just to visualize the amount of additional space that would be able to be built for the building. So today they'd have a 3 FAR, regardless of whether they're developing market rate or affordable. And this would translate to about 35 units. But under UAP, they'd get 3.9 FAR. But note that that extra 0.9 FAR needs to be used for affordable housing. And if it is, they can build somewhere between 10 and 12 more affordable units. And the building could also be 10 feet taller to accommodate these units. And now 10 to 12 more affordable units may not sound like a lot, but if this is happening at a citywide scale, it could have profound consequences. So again, this is mostly for your reference to look at after the fact. That I know it's probably not easy to see, but here's a chart showing the proposed FARs as well as base and maximum heights that are being proposed under CHO. And these basically reflect the fact that they're being increased by an additional 20% if they do include affordable housing, and how some of these are a base and max height that are increased to accommodate for larger buildings that are only slightly larger, but still they need a little bit of extra height to accommodate those units. We also have an equivalent. So this is showing R9 through R12 districts. We have an equivalent slide that is in the appendix. We can go to that later on if it's of interest. We just thought that given the makeup of CB1, this is obviously the one to focus on. I'll also note that at the very bottom of this table, there is an R11 and R12, which may be new to you because it is new. So these districts do not exist yet. I'll talk about this later on in the presentation. So these have not been mapped. This is a part of the City of Yes housing opportunity set of proposals. And basically, if these were to be mapped, it would need to go through an entire ULURP process to be mapped, and they would need to have MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing. So just like ZEO did, map new manufacturing districts. It created them, and one day they may be actually mapped, but this is doing a similar thing. Okay, so let's see. So as most of you are likely aware, voluntary inclusionary housing, or VIH, is an optional affordable housing tool that was created in the late 80s. And as you can see on the map, the blue and green VIH areas cover a relatively small portion of the city, which actually only amounts to about 13% of medium and high density districts. And VIH, the AMIs for VIH, it's set to 80%, or roughly $100,000 for a family of three. So UAP would replace the VIH program, including the inclusionary housing designated areas and R10 districts and their equivalents. The UAP framework has advantages over VIH, and these include a lower AMI of 60% rather than 80%, and also, and really importantly, the ability to income average. So that would provide a wider range of incomes, provide housing for a wider range of incomes rather than having a glut of exactly 80% AMI units. So kind of really underscoring this point. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, UAP will replace VIH in achieving deeper affordability and allowing for income averaging. So this income averaging means that instead of only having homes at a single affordability level, there can be a range. And for an example of this, it's shown on the right, a building could meet UAP's 60% AMI affordability level by including a mix of homes, some of which could be at 30% AMI, or approximately $38,000 for a family of three, 60% AMI, which is around $76,000 for a family of three, and 90% AMI, so about $114,000 for a family of three. And by enabling units at AMIs that are well below 60%, UAP could provide genuinely affordable housing for low-income New Yorkers. So CHO would also include some updates to MIH, so mandatory inclusionary housing. So MIH areas would remain in place and would be continued to be mapped when there are significant increases to residential density. Remember when I said a moment ago, when eventually, if and when R11s and R12s are mapped, they would need to be MIH because they're incredibly high density. But this proposal would nevertheless introduce some improvements to MIH. So MIH is option 3, which has previously been referred to as the deep affordability option, requires a 20% set aside at an average of 40% AMI. Today, it has to be applied as an alternate with MIH options 1 and 2. However, under this proposal, option 3 could be applied as a standalone option. Also, some MIH FARs would be increased to meet UAP FARs. So for example, R6A currently has an MIH FAR of 3.6, but that would be raised to be 3.9 to match UAP. It's also important to note that the options would remain in place, meaning that although you'd have more higher FAR, the same percentage of affordability would continue to be required within individual buildings. Finally, the current MIH program is incompatible with tools that facilitate affordable homeownership. So this proposal would exempt 100% affordable homeownership projects from rules that prevent them from penciling out. So here's another example for you. So let's say there's a site in an R7A district. It was recently rezoned and is subject to MIH. The current maximum MIH FAR is 4.6 FAR, which on this site results in 54 units. Depending on the MIH area, 25 to 30% of units would need to be affordable. Because the UAP FAR in R7A districts is 5, the MIH FAR would also be increased to 5. But the 25 to 30% affordability requirement would remain in place. This allows for 5 more units. So this is like a really meaty, like the UAP and MIH adjustments. This is a really, really big component of this text proposal, and so I think maybe we'll have more than enough time at the end to get into questions and comments. But I just want to pause right here because that was a lot of information all in one go. If we just want to just like sit with that a little bit, we could talk about what I just spoke about before going to any other proposals. We could also wait till the end to get into it more.
If I can't see who's online, might have questions, but if there are burning questions in the room, by all means. But let me just, with a real quick housekeeping note, the presentation that we're going through now, I think is different than what was emailed out to committee members on Friday. So I will ask Zach tomorrow morning, make sure all the committee members have the updated version. Even I don't have it, so I'm following along. Many of the slides are the same, but there are a few that are a little bit different. But if everybody wants to wait till the end, I really don't care, whatever helps us get through this most efficiently.
I see a couple of questions in the room. I do not see anybody whose hands are up necessarily yet.
Okay. Again, everyone's gonna have an opportunity to ask questions via the Google Forms, which will be, I think, a more efficient way of doing it, because there'll be a record of your question, there'll be a record of the answer.
Exactly.
Did you get some of the questions resent?
Yeah, so I sent them along. John, I don't want to put you on the spot, but some of the ones that I relayed over to housing, I know folks are working on them. I just don't know how.
Oh, no, I mean, we could answer them live if you would rather written questions. We will, of course, do writing as well. If you want any live answers today, we're happy to provide them. If you
Yeah, I would say broad strokes for right now. I mean, I see there are 10 questions with a number of subparts on there, but maybe just broad strokes for now.
Do we want to just do a couple quick questions?
We could just do a few now.
So if I understand correctly, the VMI, I just looked it up, so for example, for a family of two, 100% AMI is 124,300. 30% of that divided by 12 works out to be about $3,107.50 per month. And you can't get a studio apartment for two people in this neighborhood for $3,107. I don't see the incentive here. But I guess that's just an observation. One of my questions would be the increased 10 foot taller. I guess there would still be the other incentives. For example, if it's in a flood zone and the whole first floor is flood proof, then you can go up an additional 15 feet. Is that correct?
The underlying recent changes from zoning for coastal flood resiliency would apply. I'm not sure offhand what you would get in addition within this community district. I'd have to look at that.
Could you do that and get back to us? Because that's 90% of our district.
Okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're happy to look into ZIC for applicability for you. No problem.
Make sure that gets in the Google sheet though, if you don't mind, Joe.
Sure.
Question.
Sure. Great.
Alex?
I'm gonna wait until the end, I think it'll be
Richard?
easier.
Sure.
Does MIH only apply when a zoning change is implemented, or
That's right.
status quo, it doesn't apply at
Yes.
this moment?
It's similar, back in 2016, created the program. Had no immediate applicability anywhere. But when zoning changes happen that significantly increase residential capacity, typically that's just a zoning map change, sometimes M to residential, sometimes a residential upzoning. Then it becomes a MIH area as well, where any housing development in that area has to include a set aside for a percentage of affordable housing.
So if that happens, how does MIH and UAP apply together? Do they?
That's a great question. So
You wanna wait?
no, it's a great basic question. So I think this is exactly the type of questions that make sense in the middle of the presentation. So UAP would apply everywhere in R6 to R10. We're taking a magic wand and applying an inclusionary framework everywhere. except MIH areas, because in MIH areas, you have an absolute affordability obligation. You can't build anything unless you provide a percentage of affordable housing. UAP is, think of it this way, you have the market rate floor area you have today. If you want to go bigger than you have today, great, it has to be permanently affordable housing at an average 60% AMI. But MIH will continue to apply in areas where it exists today. And in the future, when zoning changes significantly increase residential capacity, that would become an MIH area as well. So we're not changing MIH, our policy about when it applies. But we can't wait since it's applied rezoning by rezoning, it would take 700 years to apply it everywhere in New York City. So in the meantime, we're taking UAP to ensure that there are inclusionary housing opportunities throughout those areas as well, outside of MIH area.
It's, I don't know why we went through that all those years ago, if it's so ineffective for so many years, but okay.
Sorry?
If you're saying that MIH takes 700 years to actually come to fruition, it just boggles my mind why we went through such mishigas so many years ago.
It's because,
Blasio administration.
again, MIH applies if and when there's a rezoning. There are areas of the city that haven't been rezoned since 1961.
Yeah.
And, typically when you're doing a rezoning, even a neighborhood rezoning, it takes years to do it, might be 50, 60 blocks or whatever. It's still just such a small percentage of the medium and high density areas in New York City. So that's it. The secret sauce of this proposal is the geography, is that it's a little bit across the widest possible geography, where it's not big changes in any one place, like you get through a neighborhood rezoning, or even like you get through a private rezoning. It's just a little bit, but because it's so broad, that's how we're, proposing to accomplish so much through it.
Just to follow up to mine, so in a rezoned area, MIH applies.
Right.
Can then UAP be applied on top of that? Is it?
No, think of them as geographically exclusive.
separate? Okay.
Yeah, once you're in MIH land, then it's not this UAP framework anymore.
But you could do UAP and follow it up if there's a rezoning, then do MIH.
Well, it depends. When you're pulling your permit, you're either in a UAP area or you're in an MIH area. So there's no way to kind of combine them in one development. So,
Jess, you had a question?
Yeah, between MIH and UAP, is the whole city covered or is it roughly what percentage of the city is covered?
a medium and high density districts. So far, Matt's just been talking about R6 through R10. Basically, all of Manhattan is R6 through R10, and so that's why we're starting there. But there's R1 through R5, low density world. We'll cover that as well, just to underscore for the community board that this is a citywide proposal. For the first time ever, we're not asking just medium and high density districts to do stuff. We're asking the whole city to contribute as well.
Thank you.
Seeing no hands online, please continue.
Yeah, I'm sorry, one more question. So Rebecca is C6, various ones. How does that relate to the R zoning that you're talking about?
Well, different C6 districts will have different residential equivalents. So, you might have a C6-3 or whatever that's R9 equivalent, or a C6-4, which is an R10 equivalent. So Matt has shown you the table with the residential districts. Once you know what your residential equivalent is, then you would know how UAP would apply there as well. And we're happy to provide those.
I'm gonna share that back just so we can. That's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
And do you by any chance have a map for us in CB1 so we actually can a zoning map up so we understand what is proposed and where?
Yeah. Sure.
Is that a yes?
Yeah, we have applicability maps. My team made applicability maps for every community district in the city.
So let's go forward.
Their plan is they like maps.
So I just want to check. So there's no AMI bands that are applicable to UAP that are can a building be above 90% AMI? I see you did 30, 60, 90, but you could go to 166 and still have the average be 60?
No, there's an absolute cap at 100%, which some community boards have been displeased by. Some Manhattan community boards like more middle income housing. But here it's an average 60%, a cap of 100, which, like I said, Today, that IH programs, the voluntary programs created what, of units at 80%. If your family doesn't earn exactly 79% of AMI, then you're totally out of luck. And so we're really excited about the averaging, which enabled us to provide a range of units for a range of families.
God bless you, whoever that was, and I
That's
guess,
able to continue on.
yeah, and I guess we will. Oops. Comment for that. Is this where we are?
Yeah, that's where we are.
Sorry.
No, that's great. So we're gonna transition to our citywide proposals. Okay, great. So one that I'm sure will be of great interest to you all has to do with conversions. So in our next proposal, we seek to make it easier to convert underused non-residential buildings, including vacant offices. So zoning already has rules that make it straightforward to convert non-residential buildings to housing. But these rules have limited applicability. Buildings generally need to be located in New York's densest commercial centers and be built before 1961 to qualify. So through this proposal, we'll simply extend those existing rules to more parts of the city and to more buildings. And this will create urgently needed homes in highly accessible locations, and will also breathe life into underused spaces. So extending our existing adaptive reuse regulations involves a few discrete changes to our zoning. So first of all, we'll change the eligible geography from only office centers, so namely here in Lower Manhattan or in limited areas of Queens and Brooklyn, to the entire city. And this would allow for the conversion of buildings beyond just office buildings to be schools or former religious buildings. Second, we'd like to allow more recent buildings to have access to our adaptive reuse regulations. So today, a building has to be built prior to 1961 or 77, depending on what part of the city you're in, to use the more flexible conversion rules. We'd like to move this cutoff date to 1990, allowing underused buildings from the 70s and 80s to be converted into housing. And finally, our current adaptive reuse regulations only apply when a non-residential building is converted into traditional apartments. But office floor plates, for example, can make it difficult for that type of housing and might be better suited for shared housing or dorms. And so we'd like to change the adaptive reuse regulations so they can be used to convert into any type of housing, including supportive housing, shared housing, dorms, things along those lines. Sorry, let's see if that works. And just to really underscore that point, the dark shaded areas where it's currently eligible geography, and the lighter purple, the pinkish color, is the proposed geography, which obviously is a massive expansion of the geography.
But also includes changes to the current eligible geography.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, so areas like CD1, actually, let me see. Okay, so under this amendment, pre-1990 buildings citywide would be able to use the provisions of Article 1, Chapter 5 to convert to residential. So this allows more flexible bulk regulations for conversions. The multiple dwelling law allows pre-1977 buildings to convert beyond 12 FAR to residential today. This currently applies to Community District 1 south of Murray Street. But this proposal would allow all pre-1977 buildings across the entirety of CD1, including north of Murray Street, to convert above 12 FAR to residential. So even in a area that is kind of leading the charge in that respect of conversions, it would still be making it more permissive in this geography to convert to residential towers.
Can you explain why Murray Street was the demarcation line?
I don't know the history of the district.
So the Lower Manhattan, the special Lower Manhattan district is sort of a vanguard in the city. Most of the city has a cutoff date of 1961 for conversions applicability. Lower Manhattan, that's 1977. So that was an inspiration for some of the moves we're making here. But if you're outside of the special Lower Manhattan, then you don't have that text that makes the conversion regs apply to pre-77.
But I thought you said the regulations updated it past to 1990, but now you're saying it's only up to 1977 building.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So 1990, very, and this is also an incredibly complex part of the city when talking about this specific issue. So correct me if I'm wrong, John, but my understanding is that this proposal would allow all buildings to convert a certain up to 10 FAR.
I mean, if they're already to
Let me, it's crazy. So I deal with folks at the state and the law department on this stuff all the time. So, in the multiple dwelling law, it exempts pre-77 buildings from the FAR cap, but not post-77 buildings. So while we can change our adaptive reuse regs up to 1990, and buildings from before 1990 can rely basically on the multiple dwelling law for light and air, only pre-77 buildings can use state law to exempt themselves from the 12 FAR cap. So there are different categories within that. And again, it's a great question that you put your finger on. We do not have the local authority here to go beyond
The
1977.
new state budget has lifted the 12 FAR cap, so does that apply here or?
If you meet certain conditions. So you gotta go through ULURP, you gotta have MIH applied, and a few other things as well. It doesn't apply, you can't do it within historic districts. So that leaves the cap in place for post-77 conversions.
So what we need to understand is where the state changes are and the city changes are and whether they're compounding.
Think of it this way, the changes to the cap would only apply in the future if city planning comes up with a proposal to map R11 or R12 somewhere. These zoning districts that Matt mentioned. But it would not give the ability for any new developments to go above 12. And like Matt's saying, only pre-77 buildings could convert above 12 FAR.
When you say convert, you mean they're already above 12? It's not that
Exactly.
They're going higher or anything. They're
They're
already above.
15, 18, whatever already today, you're converting that old office building. I mean, obviously, your community district has seen more of that than anybody else. It's existing buildings converting from non-residential to residential.
Not building on top of those buildings.
So you may be getting to,
Sorry.
it's fine, you may be getting to this, but we're talking about sort of the threshold to being allowed to do these conversions. Will this zoning text amendment deal at a granular level with any of the lessons learned, let's say, from the office conversions that have been happening over the last couple of decades, particularly in the financial district, where we've seen a lot of perhaps unintended consequences? For example, one easy and obvious thing is not allowing an existing commercial building to do away with its loading bays so that, they can use more of that for saleable real estate purposes. But in fact, they should be required to keep that space back so they can hold garbage off the streets, for example. So things like that, does this zoning text amendment get that granular, or is it more just about the thresholds to being able to do those conversions?
I'll have to come back to you on the loading bays question. We are handling things like modern sanitation practices through other components of the text amendment. I would say the main lesson that we have learned from conversions in Community District 1 are zero affordability, right?
That's the one.
Zero affordability. And so our top priority, one of our top priorities, maybe number 2, in working with the state on recent state law changes was a tax incentive for conversions that would support affordability in conversions. And what I'm hearing on the ground is that it actually is going to be very attractive, and we fully expect to get 25% affordability in conversions going forward. And we're pretty-
One question. So this already is allowable in big swath of Community District 1, and there are many buildings that are currently in the pipeline, some rumored to be in the pipeline. We just heard about that from the Downtown Alliance last month. Will it only apply on a going forward basis? Any affordability requirements such that those who are currently in the pipeline won't have to comply with it?
My assumption, from what I hear, can't make any promises, is that any projects in the pipeline now are closely looking at the tax incentive to see how and whether they can take advantage of it.
With 5,000 or so apartments coming online in the financial district alone, I would think that's probably a pretty important thing to understand. So, okay, thanks.
I would extend that question. So why in this is there no requirement for
Thank you.
affordability?
So, we're taking the existing framework and we're expanding it in certain ways. And the other thing there is we are ecstatic that there's a tax benefit available, but we had no control over whether or not a tax benefit would be available.
There is no tax benefit for Manhattan in 485X.
The tax incentive for conversions is applicable, is certainly applicable in Manhattan. And so we just got that a couple weeks ago.
Not for condo and.
You may be thinking 485X, which is the tax incentive for new development. And the thing with 421A, 485X is that it has never applied to conversions. And so what you would see is a ton of conversions that don't have any affordability in it because there's no tax benefit to support it. What happens if you mandate affordability without any means to support it is that you just don't get it at all. And so if we had a mandate in the zoning for affordability and conversions, we had an office conversions task force last year. It was created by city council. It included all the agencies, practitioners as well. They ran the numbers and found that, it costs more than you might think to convert an existing building to residential. I think the assumption that lots of folks had, maybe including me at one time, was the building already exists. How expensive can it be? It's in fact a very marginal prospect that really is only feasible for a small single-digit percentage of existing non-residential buildings. And so we found through that financial analysis that putting an affordability mandate on their feasibility goes to zero. We wouldn't get any conversions at all. And then we advocated, we lobbied the state.
And that includes tax incentives, that includes any type of incentive that the city could have come up with for any particular reason?
We don't have any authority to do tax incentives at the local level. And so we're completely beholden to the state on that. And so what our strategy on conversions affordability was put all our, put all our chips in the basket and advocate for an affordability, a tax incentive for conversion affordability, and we got it. So we're good.
So that's been passed, you say?
It's been passed.
Property.
Part of the last,
No.
it's similar to 485X or 421A, but it's final, there's finally one for conversions that requires affordability. So same basic deal, but for conversions now instead of just new developments.
It's not 45X, but what is it called?
Conversion, office conversion tax incentive. I don't even know if it has people have settled on a nickname yet. Oh, yeah.
So what is it offering exactly? I'm sorry, because it's news to me, so
It's a
the conversion tax benefit is.
It's pretty interesting, actually. It includes the sooner you act, the more generous your tax benefit is. And so it's really intending to encourage people to move quickly. The idea being we have an office vacancy crisis, we have a housing shortage. Let's get this going as soon as we can. And then it requires, if you accept the tax incentive, 25% affordability at 80% AMI. So we have been advocating for this for years. It's really, really hard to work with the state. It's a black box. We really like what came out this year. I don't know, who to thank for it, but we've got a really good tax incentive for conversions that is almost certain to net us a significant amount of affordability.
The state started on that this year.
Yeah,
And the sooner you mentioned the sooner you act. And so what's the timeframe and?
I don't have it committed to memory, but it's like if you start the process before the end of the year, then you get a longer or higher percentage in base abatement than if you do it by the end of next year, than if you do it by the end of the year after that. And so it really encourages people to get going.
And is it 80% average or is it the average? And is it permanent affordability?
Permanent affordability, yes, that's a new innovation for the tax incentives these days. The restriction period is for the life of the building. So it does, even though the tax incentive is time limited, the affordability is forever, unlike old versions of 421A. I believe, I don't know whether it allows averaging or not. I'll have to get back to you on that too.
So we're jumping around a little bit. I just want to close a loop on the conversions for a second. So for the large spot of Community District One south of Murray Street, where conversions are already allowed, save for the 13-year additional period of which buildings are to be built. Changes affects us, right?
Well, it also
Like
depends
it's build
on,
more affordable housing because it's already allowed, right?
well, no, our financial analysis, and city planning is not the agency with financial analysts and stuff like that. But what we're hearing is that it is attractive enough that, buildings that aren't already too far along will be looking very carefully and likely taking it out. Whether they could convert today, whether they're newly applicable or not. And then I wouldn't undersell another component here, which is today under the zoning, you can only convert to full-on apartments. Dwelling unit factor applies to you, so they have to be above a certain size. That really impedes the ability to convert to things like supportive housing or shared housing or dorms or smaller units or things like that. It's largely gonna be consequences on the margins. But if, for instance, you're converting a pre-61 hotel or something like that, it could enable conversion directly to supportive housing or smaller units in a way that is not allowed today.
And so if we're looking at those that are in the process of converting or that have stated they are going to convert, would they be also able to, if they sort of slow rolled, then retro apply for this program?
I have to figure out where the point of no return is, but my understanding is yes, they would be able to, and the city wants them to, the state wants them to. We would love to have affordability there, so we will, within the outer limits of our legal authority, we would let them do that.
And what is? I can't explain how often enough we've talked about affordable housing as a primary goal. The thought process that I have concerns about is it opens a large opportunity for some of the well-financed universities on the island of Manhattan as a whole to then take the opportunity to convert straight to dorms, which does not necessarily help what we're looking for affordable housing. And there's no, I mean, it could just all be dorms.
Yeah.
Or all be supportive housing, meaning shelters, right?
Supportive housing, not meaning shelters, meaning permanent supportive housing with permanent housing with supportive services, but not transient occupancy shelters. And if, this community board has concerns about enabling conversions to dorms, that's a great comment to make to city planning. We were starting from a position of wanting, because yes, housing is incredibly important, probably the paramount policy goal in the city right now. Affordable housing, incredibly important as well. But when we're talking about conversions, we're also talking about adaptive reuse of existing buildings. That's an important planning goal too. Enabling more flexibility for adaptive reuse helps, vacant or underutilized buildings become useful.
Can you explain how this works in the historic buildings for anything and everything on Governor's Island?
Well, residential uses aren't allowed on Governor's Island per the deed, so,
Some are,
this really doesn't do anything for.
some are. They're allowed to have administration and teachers' housing.
Yeah, kind of like.
University housing, so.
No, I remember the Governor's Island rezoning, but this CHO would not in any way expand, those limited permissions for residential like uses on Governor's Island. That's still prohibited. We're not trying to change that at all through this.
Wait, sorry, we just spent a long time on this. That's good.
That's good.
Good stuff.
And just for point of information, according to the Real Deal, the conversions must begin construction by June 2026 for the full time period of the abatement. And that falls, if they get started after that, the 30 years and then the 25 years. It's a 35-year, 90% tax abatement.
Thanks, George.
So, what happens after 35 years?
Their tax benefit drops off. They're paying full taxes, but any units that were required to be affordable remain affordable at those AMIs into the future.
The incentive is to get building.
What's What was the 90 years?
Not 90%.
Oh, 90%.
90% tax rate.
And so 30 years from now, if I understand correctly, a 3-family, 2-bedroom apartment that today is $3,100 at whatever, 60% or 90%, whatever it was. It will, that monthly rent will increase based off of the AMI increases. But is there anything that prevents us from falling back into a situation we had with rent control where there were 26,000 some, vacant properties because they weren't, the landlords weren't keeping up with them throughout the years?
Yeah, I mean, so you start with, say, 60% AMI, and then you are subject to the more restrictive every year of AMI increases or the rent guidelines board increases, because these units get rent stabilized as well, actually. So that's how rents go up over time. When you're talking about units created through the zoning, the level of enforcement on those is much closer and more exacting than it is for rent stabilization. And so HPD, they're the agency that administers those through restrictive declarations on the existing property and basically periodic certification of all those units to make sure that they are occupied over time. So we have not seen the types of enforcement issues with zoning created inclusionary units that apparently you see sometimes with rent stabilized, or that you see sometimes with just like straight 421A units as well. I've seen articles about that, but HPD's been administering the IH units for decades now, and we do not have problems with that there.
Okay, I'm gonna keep us rolling, and I think maybe for the remainder of this, maybe we like jot down questions so we can get them at the end, because make sure we get through all the proposals. I want to respect your time, so, okay, so, we don't need to spend too much time. I feel like we've really thoroughly gone into this, but, a quick example that you guys are probably quite familiar with is 180 Water Street, a 1971 office building that was converted in 2017 and brought online 580 units. And just to connect it to the points that we were talking about earlier, 180 Water was only able to convert because the community district already has flexible conversion rules. So had this vacant office building been located elsewhere in the city, even Midtown, or it would not have been able to convert. And similarly, if it had been built just 7 years later, it would also be forced to remain in underused commercial space. So we'd like to fit these outdated and arbitrary rules to allow for a more consistent zoning framework across the entire city.
Using that example, broke the rule.
So.
You got it down.
And so we spoke about this a moment ago, but so on the topic of small and shared apartments. So the next proposal would remove outdated rules to allow for more small and shared apartments. So this means, when we're talking about this, like this type of housing typology, we're talking about simple, no frills studios, as well as homes with private bedrooms, but shared kitchens and other common facilities. These buildings have historically played an important role in New York's housing landscape, especially for young working New Yorkers and who need a place to stay while they're getting their feet under them. But despite this, in 1961, the zoning resolution banned these types of units. So as a result, many people are forced into living situations that they don't necessarily want. This includes doubling up in overcrowded apartments, or many young professionals teaming up with roommates to occupy family-sized units. Reviving small and shared apartments could provide much-needed housing opportunities for New Yorkers, especially those who are marginally housed and people who would prefer to live alone but can't afford to do so. And importantly, it could ease the pressure on larger units, freeing them up for families who need them most.
Are these similar to the old SROs?
You could, so the core of these proposals, the shared housing proposals, are with HPD for regulatory agreement projects, that is 100% affordable projects. But in the years we've been working with HPD on that, we've seen other jurisdictions just go that final step. And with certain types of restrictions and management requirements in place, they've enabled, non-affordable shared housing often for young professionals or for older households. We actually have some informal SROs not too far from Community District 1 over in Chinatown, where this would give us the ability to like legalize them and formalize them so that they're not subject to the whims of, whatever. So, shared housing, it's a versatile set of proposals, but it's not strictly limited to affordable projects.
Let them get through.
Wait a minute.
Hold on. How many slides do you have?
Uh,
The first deck that we said was 38, so we're on,
yeah, no, so don't be freaked out by the sheer number, because a lot of them are in the appendix. We have in the main slide deck 46, and we're at
23.
23.
So I'm gonna ask everybody to chill.
What? Yeah, we gotta wrap this up in the next.
Is that the woman's?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
And then there?
My brother handled a lawsuit there.
so yeah, so
18 years.
So to make this less conceptual and more of a concrete example, we can look at a historical example of small and shared housing. So in the early 20th century, countless New Yorkers lived in buildings like the Barbizon, located at Lexington and East 63rd Street, where they could rent reasonably priced rooms for small apartments. And this was built in 1928. And it originally contained a mix of 655 small and shared units. And, this looks like many other cities or buildings throughout New York, but under our current zoning, it couldn't be built today. And so this text amendment intends to change that.
Can we get a square footage on what small is?
At the end, we can simply get into that. Okay, so zoning changes for shared housing. So our current zoning does not have a clear path
That's a
for
small
building
print.
shared housing. This text amendment would create clear rules and make the process less complex, enabling a fuller range of shared housing options. These updated rules would make it possible to build shared housing in any multifamily zoning district. This would enable the development of new shared housing, including affordable shared housing across the city. These clear rules would also help to legalize existing and unregulated shared housing. Other cities like San Diego and Seattle have already re-legalized this kind of housing and found that it meets a need in their housing markets. New York can learn from these examples, as well as its own history to follow suit. All right. So allowing buildings with more small apartments would involve changes to dwelling unit factor, which, as I'm sure many of you know, is a measure of the minimum average unit size of a building. The zoning rule requires buildings to have a mix of large and small units if they want to max out their space. The dwelling unit factor is outdated and redundant with other codes that do a better job of regulating minimum unit size. Under this proposal, the dwelling unit factor would be removed in transit-rich areas like CD1, in what's known as the transit area, which is shown in dark green here. Obviously, the entire district is dark green because of that.
Does that include Battery Park City? Because the maps you sent on the first deck did not.
It does.
Does there?
Just checking that.
Buildings would still be subject to rules like the Housing Maintenance Code and the Building Code, which do set minimum sizes for livable rooms and require things like windows and other measures for safety and livability. Income restricted housing would still be subject to existing HPD rules about bedroom mixes. Outside this central area, the zoning regulations will be reduced and simplified so that all multifamily buildings have a dwelling unit factor of 500. Currently, we find this to be like an arbitrary factor that varies by district. So we are getting rid of them, but reducing them in other areas. And I can show you a map in the appendix slide that kind of lays out where there's, reducing and simplifying the dwelling unit factor versus eliminating it outright, which would be the case in CD1. Okay, perfect. Okay, so speak of the devil. That is the image that shows in the light green, that would be the reduction and simplification of this. And green areas, it would be removed. This proposal also includes the creation, there we go. This proposal also includes the creation of new zoning districts, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation, above 12 FAR. The maximum FARs for R11 and R12 districts are 15 and 18 FAR respectively. These zoning units can only be mapped with MIH, which I also mentioned. This proposal would create two new medium density districts as well, an R62 and an R6D. These districts are intended to fill the gap in the existing spectrum of zoning districts. And other zoning medium density districts have had their FARs gradually increase over time beyond the 3A FAR. And so we find that this kind of fits that niche that New Yorkers need. Also, like I said, there are absolutely no mapping actions as a part of this text amendment, meaning that separate actions would be required and they would go through the Euler process to rezone areas to these new district types. And so this is similar to ZEO, which also created new, proposed to create new district types, but did not actually map any. It will also be expanding the landmark TDR, or Transfer of Development Rights program. So this program was created in the 1960s to relieve the financial burden on designated landmarks, which are subject to maintenance requirements and have are limited in their ability to redevelop and add new buildings to the lot. It would also allow landmarks to transfer development rights to more sites, including other zoning lots on the same block as a landmark, or immediately across the street, or an intersection from that block. So as you can see, on top shows what's currently where it's kind of hard probably to tell from far away, but the bright magenta color is the actual landmark itself, and it shows a really small area where you can transfer those rights. And as you can see on the bottom, the radius is significantly larger.
Can you,
The proposed,
yeah, can you, I would love to hear what immediate vicinity needs, because that's.
I thought we were.
Yeah.
the proposal would streamline.
Write it down, Tim.
I'm writing it down, trust me.
But
Good going.
Okay.
you tell me, we can answer.
No, hold this in.
We're taking notes here too. Yeah.
The
Sorry.
proposal would streamline.
My job off the floor from this slide and then write my question down. Go ahead.
The proposal would streamline the approval process to a certification when no bulk modifications are necessary to accommodate the TDRs on the receiving site, or an authorization when an applicant is seeking bulk modifications. Currently, the program is not available for landmarks in historic districts or low density R1 through R5 zoning districts. So this proposal would expand the applicability of the landmark TDR program to those areas as well. These expansions of the landmark program, TDR program, would help generate revenue to maintain landmarks while also unlocking additional housing opportunities. Now we're going to move on to the part of the proposal aimed at allowing contextual infill on campuses and irregular sites. So previous campus development often took place under tower in the park style regulations called height factor. Although DCP has developed a more recent set of regulations for contextual buildings that have height limits and result in better designs, some sites like NYCHA campuses can't access those new rules. The proposed changes would allow height-limited infill on sites that would otherwise be forced to develop tall, skinny towers or nothing at all. A variety of other changes would address barriers faced by irregular or challenged sites, which include making more sites eligible for contextual envelopes and eliminating the outdated sliver law in favor of height-limited contextual envelopes. So here is another example for you. So campuses are defined as sites that are 1.5 acres or larger, or sites that have full control of the block. In medium and high density areas, the proposal would do two things. First, it would replace mixing rules that prevent zoning lots developed with height factor buildings from adding contextual height limited buildings. Second, it would align the distance between building rules with the existing multiple dwelling law. In practice, this means that a 40-foot distance between buildings must be maintained, or for buildings that are over 125 feet, the distance between buildings must be at least 80 feet. So we're gonna look at other proposals, and again, we can look at more of these in depth. We have many appendix slides if you want to go to them at the end. But these include ending parking mandates, requiring and incentivizing multifamily buildings with over 9 or more dwelling units to provide better amenity space, increasing flexibility for split lots, as well as clarifying and simplifying railroad rights-of-way special permits. So like I said, if at the very end you want to go to those, we can go into the appendix as needed. So we're going to now look at special districts. So New York City, as you know, has a diverse array of special districts that have been enacted to further neighborhood planning goals. And as a general approach, the proposal includes changes to special districts to ensure that these areas provide appropriate housing opportunities. Broadly speaking, but with some exceptions, CHO changes are deferential to existing special district regulations. Many zoning districts have FARs that differ significantly from the underlying zoning. A lot of special districts were written before there were analogous rules for underlying districts, things like related to like lot coverage, for example. So the goal was to eliminate redundant text in the special district and align it with the broader underlying district's rules to create a more consistent framework. There are many areas throughout the zoning text where, certain parts are repeated from the underlying in the special districts, and it basically means that there's many parts of just redundant text that this is kind of a watershed moment to clean up some of those redundancies to make it kind of work more clearly and cohesively. So the changes to special districts generally fall into 2 categories. So the first of which is we want to align special districts with the UAP framework. They would do this by replacing the inclusionary housing programs with UAP, with that program. It would also increase maximum FARs by 20%, assuming it is including affordable housing. I do want to note that R9 and R10 districts would still be limited to 12 FAR. And then it would also be updating certain height limits to ensure that the additional FAR could actually be constructed. Also, we're proposing updates that would bring special districts into better alignment with underlying zoning districts. And this includes aligning regulations to those of the underlying districts that already govern things like yards, lot coverage, street walls. Like I said, cutting down on those redundancies. Also eliminating certain rules that conflict with citywide proposals, an example of which is the dwelling unit factor. And where applicable, eliminating bespoke rules for residential conversions to align with updated citywide conversion regs. So we're going to zoom in even further. We're going to look these are the most notable that we identified parts of, the special lower Manhattan district, how it would be changed. So the first of which comes as no surprise, it would apply the UAP program. So this would update floor area charts in the ZR, removes the inclusionary housing provisions, and it also clarifies how floor area bonuses are calculated within the UAP framework. Second, it requires recreation space and multifamily buildings. It removes the floor area increase provision and mandating that all multifamily units or buildings be subject to a single set of recreation space requirements. So before CHO, you could only get to 12 FAR by providing amenity space, which is relatively easy for developers to satisfy. And so CHO would make the recreational space mandatory. And instead, to get to 12 FAR, developers would need to provide affordable housing through the UAP program. And lastly, it aligns bulk regulations with underlying rules. So it updates provisions of the C62A to reflect the underlying zoning, including higher height in order to make UAP feasible. The special minimum base height rules would remain. Transition over to Tribeca. So as with Lower Manhattan, this would apply the UAP program. It updates the maximum FAR for areas A1 through A7, modifies maximum building heights to enable UAP, and also replaces inclusionary housing provisions with UAP. So it's quite similar to what I just described for Lower Manhattan. It also applies certain underlying provisions. So it applies underlying contextual zoning to area 3A and applies underlying height and setback regulations to areas A5 through A7 to enable a higher maximum building height, again, in order to allow for UAP buildings to have enough, height to accommodate those new affordable units. The special bulk provisions would mimic the contextual rules that are being updated to align, the special bulk provisions that mimic contextual rules are being updated to align with the underlying contextual district provisions. And so this is an example, this shows how this is taken straight from the annotated text. This just shows how in areas A4 through A7, how the maximum FAR will be increasing to those figures there. And also, you see the bump reflected on the right-hand side. That includes affordable housing. So in A4 area, for example, you can go from 6.5 FAR to 7.8 should you include affordable housing. And this is also reflecting, this is also taken from the annotated text. This shows that the underlying height and setback regulations would instead apply to these districts, except for area A4, which is that tiny, you see on the top left side of the map, it's that tiny little sliver. It's really difficult to see it. It's this tiny, tiny little area. And so here, the maximum building height would be 145 feet, or if the building participates in UAP, 175 feet. But the other areas would have the underlying height and setback regulations for the underlying districts. All right, so for the special Battery Park City District, it also incorporates UAP. So UAP would apply here, but because Battery Park City, like any new development in that area, it's for all intents and purposes, it's essentially a part of a master plan that specifies what you can build and where. And so everything requires the approval of the Battery Park City Authority. So UAP applies, but it's not as of right in the same way. And as we spoke about earlier, Governor's Island is unchanged from the proposals that are incorporated into housing opportunity. And so after promising it this whole time, we're going to very quickly go to low density. And again, if you want to get into the weeds for whatever reason, we have appendix slides, but I'll just kind of very, very high level give this overview. So due to restrictive zoning, most low density areas have stopped building new homes essentially and contributed greatly to our city's housing shortage. So the most significant components for the low density proposals have to do with town zoning. So to re-legalize housing above businesses on commercial streets in low density areas, a historical building typology that became increasingly illegal since following 1961. Transit-oriented development, so this would allow for modestly sized transit-oriented apartment buildings and low-density residence districts. Like I spoke about earlier, it would also help allow homeowners to build ADUs or accessory dwelling units to allow 1 or 2 family homes to have a small unit out back for the young, for the old, to allow more flexibility for different housing arrangements. And also it would allow for greater flexibility for homeowners. It would adjust FAR, perimeter heights, yard sizes, and other rules that prevent homeowners from having more flexibility on making any alterations to their homes in these low density areas. And so again, we can go into any of those if you would like. And so I'm just gonna wrap up here before we go into more Q&A. So the changes that I walked through today are some of the most important proposals within this text amendment. Overall, City of Yes for Housing Opportunity aims to create a little more housing everywhere so that each neighborhood does its part in addressing housing needs. And a few neighborhoods aren't disproportionately pressured as they are today. It's not just that we need more housing, though. It's also about different types of housing. Multifamily housing, where it's not currently allowed because of exclusionary zoning, homes of different sizes to meet different people's needs, and crucially, far more affordable and supportive housing. And so to quickly look at the kind of where we're going from here, here's our timeline. So the proposal was referred about 2 weeks ago on April 29th, beginning a 60-day CB review. And we expect that we'll have a city council vote at the end of this year. We're about to transition into questions, but I just really want to underscore that it's so helpful getting written comments and questions from you guys, because it's just every community district needs to know so many things, and we have wonderful people like John who are just like trying to corral all this information, and having it in writing is really valuable for us. So following this meeting, getting those questions would be really great.
So Matt, just on this point, on the timing, John as well, for zoning for economic opportunity, there was an additional period of time that that the City Planning Commission was willing to afford the community boards. And if that was requested and granted in this case, I know that pushes things out probably a little bit more, because many community boards don't meet in August. Ours doesn't. So, realistically, we would be looking at any additional time would take us to a resolution in September. Is that, I just very bluntly ask, is that a realistic thing?
Yes. So first of all, your clock didn't start until the 8th. It was 9 days after May. So we're 5 days into the 60-day period. And as with EO, the commission is willing to take resolutions from the CB up until the last possible moment.
Okay.
Right now, it looks like the CPC vote is going to be in September, so there would be some possibility. I don't know that's going to be the end of September, but there would be some possibility when folks return from August break to do their resolution then as well.
Well, I guess actually, now that I think about it, so if clock starts on May 8th, we'd have to have a resolution theoretically by July 8th, but any extension would take us out through the end of our July meeting anyway. So just CB1 members, keep that in mind, that I think by the end of July, we'll probably.
But if we have,
something.
if our full board meeting where we would bring out this resolution would be at the end of September,
No, currently, without any extension, we would need to have this done by the end of our end of June meeting.
Right.
And I'm saying if there is additional time, it's not gonna buy us till September, it's gonna buy us till the end of July.
I got
Because
you.
the
Yeah.
CPC is gonna be meeting at some point in September, and certainly not, certainly before the last Tuesday.
Right. Okay.
Okay, thanks, that's just a little program note. All right, guys, I wanna get everybody out of here by or before 8 o'clock. I know we've got a lot of questions, it's about 30-some minutes. We can do this like we've done with some of the bigger ones in the past and do a congressional style, where each member gets a few minutes to ask for whatever questions you want to ask, and we'll move along. I know there's so many questions, please understand, this isn't your only opportunity to ask. The Google Doc is gonna be the greatest way to get those questions out there. I would try to keep it at a high level at this point, you know, getting down to.
always
square footage.
Can we start with George though, Patrick, because he's here tonight, or are you not, you're just here to listen? There is nothing here.
ask questions, but it's, you know, I think it's.
Or how do you
important
want
that members-
to? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's important that the committee members asking the questions, George is able to hear and internalize that a bit. And you're free to ask whatever you want, but I know you've got a lot of opportunity to ask a lot of questions around, but I want to make sure that our committee members have you. So, why don't we do this? Why don't we just go around, Richard, we'll start with you.
Got one high level question. You say there's less pressure on gentrifying neighborhoods. Could you explain that? Why, how is that the case?
Absolutely.
What is happening here that does that? And a related question to that, I'm cheating. A related question to that is, in a high density neighborhood, you're talking about increasing housing across the whole city. And you're talking about numbers of housing, but what about measures of density? What happens to the density measurement or metric in a high density neighborhood versus the density in the low density neighborhoods? Are high density neighborhoods just by definition becoming controllably dense?
I think,
Where-
I think I'd like to take that in reverse if I could. So we really need, I keep telling Manhattan office, and I'm gonna yell at you guys again tomorrow. They don't include slides on the low density proposals, which are really exciting, and we need to emphasize to community districts like yours that this really is a citywide proposal. If anything, the changes in the low density districts are more meaningful on the margin, because they're starting from a lower base, right? So if you're enabling ADUs in a single family neighborhood, whoa, you've just, doubled the density on certain lots, permissible density. And so that, while we don't expect take up to be, 100% or even 10%, the changes there are more significant in terms of, impacts on density on the margin than in a place like, Community District 1 in Manhattan, where, the most consequential proposal is to give a 20% bump, or roughly a 20% bump for permanently affordable housing. And so we firmly believe that almost every type of neighborhood, at least across the city, can take a little bit more density. We are definitely not trying to inundate anybody. The strategy is the opposite. A little bit everywhere means that nobody has to, bear too much of the burden there. That's the approach here. Our environmental review. So, we had to do the biggest environmental review in city history. It found that the number of units created, which could be up to 110,000 units on the margin over 15 years, means one more unit per acre over 15 years. So that's what we're talking. Again, the secret sauce here is the geography. The city is so big that 1 unit per acre over 15 years can result in a significant amount of new housing. And the whole purpose of that is to, among other things, to take pressure off of neighborhoods that are under a ton of pressure today. Say you're going to think about like a Brooklyn neighborhood that's famously gentrifying, like maybe a Crown Heights or a Bed-Stuy or something like that. What's happening in neighborhoods like that is that people are having to go farther and farther out. People with money are having to go farther and farther out in search of housing, because some areas a little closer to the core have been pretty good at, preventing housing from being built there. When you look at the neighborhoods in New York City that are losing housing, it's not like outer borough parts that nobody wants to be at. It's places like parts of the Upper East Side, Upper West Side, parts of Manhattan Community District 2, that are really rich, but that have pretty strict caps on what you can build. And so, you actually see those neighborhoods losing housing. That type of thing puts pressure on the Crown Heights of the world, puts pressure on the Bed-Stuys of the world. So if we're enabling a little more housing everywhere, then we're enabling more people to find housing before they have to go to historically lower income parts of the city and bid up rents there. Does that make sense?
By the way, John, don't yell at Matt Ezra. They have been fantastic partners throughout.
Oh,
all
yes,
these.
I was joking a little bit, but
Stick up for him.
sometimes you make presentations at community boards and the assumption is that this is only about our community district. And this proposal is really about the other 58. Honestly, it's really about the other 58, and it's hard to get into that mindset.
Yeah, but it's very key to understand how it applies in our community district, I think.
It's the most important thing, yeah.
And again, kudos to the DCP people who've been very sensitive to that.
I think it's probably right, just go around and
Yeah, jump.
Me? Yeah. So let's say I own a little family home in Greenpoint and we don't want it. There's nothing you can do to make us build. So have you put that in your equation and how?
Sure, I mean, anytime we make changes to the zoning, they're gonna be relatively broad, but we don't expect 100% of the people to take it up. We don't expect 50, we don't expect 10%. It's all about making changes that enable some people on the margin to take advantage of that. And while you don't wanna change your single-family home or your small building in Greenpoint, maybe some other folks on the block do, some other folks in the neighborhood do. Maybe you sell your home eventually to somebody who decides that they wanna, develop something on the site. And so over time, you see people kind of growing into the existing zoning a bit. But there are plenty of parts of the city that have not grown into there are parts of the city that are shrunk wrapped. But there are other parts of the city that still have zoning capacity that, they're still growing into. So we don't expect this to be like a wave of change. It's all about creating marginal opportunities that can happen over time in the future.
And of course, the developers will pick and choose what they want to, where and when they want to build.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. So one of the
They're
advantages,
gonna pick and choose what they can and forget about the rest.
one of the things that we've seen in other jurisdictions that have done something similar, where you do pretty broad, geographically broad incremental changes, is that development will tend to flow towards the highest market parts of the city where it can't happen today. So you may see, developers are correct, probably will go after the marginal opportunities that are created in the highest market areas. And that's another way that it takes pressure off of gentrifying neighborhoods. Some gentrifying neighborhoods have, waves of renters looking for housing. Other, neighborhoods have waves of development because they're one of the last places, in a given area where you can develop. And so by creating a lot more opportunity here in terms of, creating new development sites on the margin, we hope to address both of those types of pressure. So we see that as a feature, not a bug, that developers will, and it will free up, neighborhoods today that see a lot of competition for land from the big guys. We hope that creates opportunities for smaller guys and for nonprofit developers in neighborhoods where that is a type of development that's more welcome than the types of things that they're seeing today.
I'm finished.
Did you say Netta?
Yeah.
No, I think this is really interesting because this is a little bit of means of control that you guys can also direct where the development is going to be. Or project based on your study and analysis, where do you think that the big developers with D are going to invest from?
And nobody has a crystal ball at all. We do have an environmental review that is our best attempt to assess what the effects of the development would be. But it is about creating opportunities and, hoping that certain types of things happen. So we think it's a good set of proposals.
Jess, I'll come back to you to.
Yeah, I have technical questions that I will.
Yeah, great, perfect. And Pat, I see your hand is up online as well. I'm just gonna let the committee members go first and then, non-committee CD1 members. So Joe, you're next.
Yeah, just going back to the issue of, the word small. So what is in it? What are in the regulations right now from keeping an apartment, from becoming, smaller as part of this affordability? Just as a reference, I noticed that, the Barbizon, for example, a studio apartment there is roughly 426 square feet. What's keeping this from swinging into micro apartments or something that's happened in other, globally,
No, great
Yeah.
question, great question. So today, that dwelling unit factor in the zoning for Community District 1 is about 680, which roughly translates into a minimum average unit size. So if you wanted to max out a development site with 400 square foot units or whatever, you just couldn't do that today. You'd have to balance out however many 400 square foot units that you created with 800 square foot units or 1,300 square foot units or whatever. You go back in the zoning text, this is a true story, CPC text. When this was being implemented, the CPC said we need to prevent Manhattan from being overrun by stewardesses. They were very concerned and that, I don't know, but they were very concerned about creating, more Barbizons that were just going to house the stewardesses. It's literally in the City Planning Commission reports. So if we eliminate that dwelling unit factor from the zoning, then it reverts to things like housing maintenance code, building code, ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, which gets you right back to like a minimum of around 400 with the various requirements on there. And that's, we think that that's appropriate, that those types of issues are more appropriately regulated in housing maintenance code, building code, ADA, things like that, than they are in the zoning.
Alice?
I have a lot of questions which I'll reserve to putting in the written formula because they're big ones, I think, but I'm just curious. In the developer shoes, how do you support, what incentivizes the developer to develop shared housing in this district?
That was a question that we looked into early in the proposal development phase. And we came to the conclusion that we do not think that our small and shared housing proposals will like unleash the market in Manhattan. It's not going to become the new norm that you're doing developments full of studios, for better, for worse. But it creates opportunities on the margin for certain types of projects that can't happen otherwise. So while we don't think it'll become the new norm, we do expect to see a project here, a project there. But I would not characterize as small and shared as one of the top tier, in terms of production.
It's a powerful idea on a lot of levels in terms of just social housing, many paradigms you see in Europe, and it's a really powerful idea. And it seems like, gosh, it would be great if there was some way to support this in a way that really it would happen. I agree. It probably won't. It will be minuscule.
Yeah, there may be more opportunity a little farther out where land values aren't quite as high, but also just, I don't know if Matt underscored it, but these proposals emerge from our fair housing reporting, where we live, that we did in 2020. Everything in here is in our Where We Live fair housing reporting. In chapter 6, goals, strategies, concrete actions that we as a city can take to affirmatively further fair housing. That's where it comes from. And so when you're talking about small and shared, for me, there's a lot of resonance with fair housing issues here since we banned them in the 1950s, basically because of, the unsavory folks who lived in SROs, and so like reversing that kind of black mark in New York City housing policy, just like, feels right, even if it's not gonna like unleash a tidal wave of shared housing.
And just relatedly, what would incentive, in the example that you gave at 180 Water Street and the 500 units, what incentivizes that those would become affordable?
So today, if they, we're just breaking ground today, that tax incentive, my understanding is that it would be really darn attractive to get that 40-year tax abatement if they could qualify for it, and then you'd have 100 and some affordable units there. It's a missed opportunity. We love housing of all types. We hope that the 180 waters of the future will include, a significant portion.
Including the, the one with the 1,300 units, the largest conversion in the United States. All of these are,
We'll see. Maybe since they don't have their final CBO yet. I don't know. I have not heard anything specific about this, but it may be the case that that they will try to go after the tax incentive too. I don't know. I haven't heard anything.
Thanks.
Yeah, Richard?
Staying here, staying here.
I wanted to give Pat Moore a chance first. Pat, if you're able to unmute and ask your question.
You hear me?
Yes, how are you?
You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So I didn't hear anything about sanitation concerns, garbage pickup, as these areas become more dense, as they build new housing, composting, recycling. Are these going to be required? Are they going to set aside cold storage rooms for garbage? With all of the you people in our community, we know we have mountains and mountains of garbage. And so that is and has continued to be a big concern. Are there going to be new requirements added to all of this new building?
That's a fantastic question. Yes, as part of this proposal, we are changing the zoning to accommodate modern waste collection, standards and processes. For instance, in that bullet in Matt's presentation on new incentives for amenities, we are enabling new deductions for ground floor or cellar sanitation collection for things like rows, the modern roll-on, roll-off trash containers. They can't be accommodated very well today in buildings through the zoning. We are also updating the way that zoning regulates trash rooms. Today, you have one on every floor. You can only exempt 12 square foot for each one. That's because that zoning predates recycling and other types of waste collection, predates ADA requirements for those as well. And so through our change to the way that floor area regulates amenities, we've worked with some external entities, what's the organization's name? I can't quite remember, to make sure that our zoning is accommodating modern sanitation practices to the extent that we can. So great question.
And composting.
Composting, I think, is subsumed under, trash, sanitation, recycling stuff. The zoning will be able to better accommodate. I don't know whether that happens in a trash room or in facilities in a basement, but you will newly be able to exempt those from floor area in a way that will incentivize creation of those spaces.
That question just made me think of something. So, as you work with the new age and what spaces are required for trash collection and housing that, as you do away with the parking mandate, what about storage within the buildings for, two-wheel mobility for bikes and scooters and that sort of stuff?
I don't think that we are changing the way that the bike parking, I know we're not changing requirements around bike parking. So those would continue to be required. They're not being eliminated along with the car parking requirement.
All right, Richard, you have one more question and one more at a high level that we can.
I have some. First one, you talked about the new R11, R12. Are you actually proposing any R11, R12 districts at this point?
No, we're not proposing any R11, R12 at this point. Definitely not as part of these proposals.
Okay.
No map changes at all.
Another high level. What analysis have you done, or share the analysis? I'm sure you must have done analysis on the impact of all of this to our housing need and to rent levels.
Well, it's more of an art than a science. And various people have tried to quantify what the housing shortfall is in New York City. When you're trying to do that, I would say that the goal is to try to achieve a healthy vacancy rate, a vacancy rate that actually provides housing options for people who are looking for housing, whether it's homeownership or more typically rental.
What number is that?
I would say that that's probably like, 6 or 7% around there, is a housing market that feels, much better than the soul crushing housing market that we have today. And so when you're trying to quantify how many units we would need in order to achieve something like that, I think that that's kind of roughly the goal. As it is, if you have a housing vacancy rate of 1.4% or whatever, tenants don't have realistic options. Landlords know that tenants don't have realistic options. Landlords know that they can raise rents with impunity, know that they can rent out any crappy old apartment with a bathtub and the kitchen or whatever. They know they don't have to be responsive when there's a hole in the floor. In a market like this, the balance of power has just shifted so far in the direction of landlords. So part of this is just to try to shift that back to a more reasonable place. The administration has announced a moonshot goal of 500,000 additional units over 10 years. And I would say that underlying that is this idea, okay, how much would it take us to get to like a healthy vacancy rate? Some other folks have tried to quantify it, and it's roughly in the same vicinity. I feel like upper growth is like 400 and some thousand units. I think some entities hired, I think KKRF to do an estimate. It's like roughly around there as well. Our environmental analysis shows that these proposals could create 110 to 110,000 units on the margin, like over the no action over 15 years. Our background production these days is a little over 20,000. And then we're also working, of course, with the state and on neighborhood rezoning initiatives in various parts of the city. I'll be honest with you, it's going to be really, 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 really hard. And it would be very historically anomalous to hit that 500,000 moonshot within 10 years. But this is probably the biggest thing we're doing at the local level to try to significantly change the trajectory of housing production in the city. And we may not hit that healthy vacancy rate, but we think we can get a housing market that just feels better than the thing we have today.
Joe, do you wanna?
Sure, I'd love to have some questions, and you can tell me when I have to stop.
Like 5 minutes.
All right, so one of the things that I thought was really, like, I was surprised to see this, because I hadn't really seen it in much of your documentation speed. The change of long-standing standards for residential development, and I'll take a few off just for the me. So the reduction of the rear yard from 30 feet to 20 feet if it's below 75 feet. Reduction of court sizes from 1,200 square feet with no dimension less than 30 feet to 800 square feet with no dimension less than 20 feet. Again, it's below 75 feet. Side yards, if they're provided, go from 8 feet to 5 feet. Distance between buildings from 60 to 40. The increase in maximum lot coverage on interior and through lots from 70 to 80. And legal windows no longer needed. You no longer need 30 feet for legal windows. It can be 20 feet. Those seem to be, I mean, at least from somebody who follows standards like this, those seem to be fairly significant. And I guess, you know, I'd like you to just comment briefly on why, you know, these standards were put in place for health and comfort of residents, right? And I guess, why are we changing them?
Well, in many instances, it's to just align the zoning with state MDL standards. As you guys know, the multiple dwelling law provides a set of standards at the state level that we can defer to. Sometimes we can go lower than, other times where we've been more restrictive than. But, you know, similar to other aspects of this proposal, there's like significant historicist aspects of this, like to look to buildings that exist in New York City that really work. You mentioned some lower density things there in addition to high density things. But for instance, our missing middle, we're basically just re-legalizing building types like 2, 3, 4 stories of residential above a commercial ground floor that exist all over New York, but you can't build today because of standards like this. Or 3, 4, 5-story residential buildings on large lots near transit on a wide street or the short end of the block. We can't build those today because of standards like this. And so similarly, rear yards too, reducing from 30 to 20 to accommodate things like ADUs or families that just want to bump out a kitchen or create a solarium in the rear yard or something like that. That exists. It's fine. People love that building typology. We've rendered it illegal over the years. And so as part of our just deep dive into building types that work or don't work in New York City history, we've adjusted some standards to make sure that we're not overdoing it, that we haven't gone so far with the health and safety and light and air standards and stuff like that, that we've actually rendered illegal housing types that have worked great for New Yorkers and are still very sought after today.
So one of the things that zoning also does is it brings predictability, right? That's always been something, or at least it used to be something that these people will talk about, the predictability that zoning brings. And, you know, if you look at the height and setback rules, we have the basic height and setback rules, we have height and setback rules for UAP buildings, and then we have the height and setback rules for eligible sites. And then we have, if you have a site that's 40,000 square feet, you have another set of height and setback rules. And I guess when you can measure sites, especially the last two, based upon the zoning lot, which may or may not be your development site, and that's, you know, solely up to the developer, and allowing you now to cross streets. Is it still predictable?
Yeah, I mean, so I would say that one of the main thrusts of these proposals is to take the million different standards that exist in this special district and that special district and this like defined area in the zoning and just unify them. Over time, we've discovered things that work, whether it's like street wall rules that work, for instance, you know, or face height rules that work. And instead of having them live off to the side in one tiny special district in one part of the city, say, these have worked. This can be our new underlying, let's unify this across standards. George, you also mentioned things like eligible sites, which is true on larger sites that have existing buildings. That's intended to provide a new contextual envelope in those types of situations. Today, zoning lots with existing buildings on them are often forced to do height factor development. I don't know if that means anything to you, but the non-contextual zoning from 1961 with tall skinny buildings surrounded by open space that was intended to do tower in a park on our cleared urban renewal super blocks around the city. Of course, you know, that only went so far. With this eligible sites, we're providing a new contextual envelope on sites that today would be forced to do tall skinny buildings. And so, you know, for the 200 Amsterdams of the world, I think George was involved in the fight against that. Or Claremont Hall up in Morningside Heights, I think you were involved in the fight against that. Some buildings in Brooklyn, like the one on the far side of Prospect Park, where it's at a regular site and we force them to do a tall skinny building that everybody hates. Or have you been to Sheepshead Bay lately? Where, you know, there's an R6 building that towers over everything around it because it's this massive irregular lot. That's unpredictability. And these new.
Tribeca.
Which one? Is there something coming?
Yeah.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna get to that question.
Okay, but the envelopes, the things that George was asking about, eligible sites, which are new contextual height limited envelopes for infill, we think go a great way to support predictability, rather than the tall skinny buildings that would otherwise happen that everybody around the city hates. So I would say that through unifying standards and creating pathways for even irregular sites or zoning lots with existing building to do height limited infill, we are reinforcing predictability in New York City.
Should we just go ahead and ask about it?
I'm sorry.
Do you want to just go ahead and ask?
Yeah, so you mentioned that there's contextual zoning here and height predictive or height leveling, however you described it. So there's a building proposed in Tribeca, C64.
Arch and building, okay.
That's proposed to be 940 feet. How does that happen? Number one, and number two, would this impact that?
So C64, that is a, you know, highest density tower district. We are not proposing to eliminate tower rules in R9 and R10. Those are in R9 equivalents and R10 equivalents. They're, you know, are rules that enable you to, you know, penetrate that sky exposure plane and go up to unlimited height. And, you know, we've talked about that at city planning, but we are not proposing anything as drastic as eliminating the tower regulations in R9 and R10 where it exists today. And it sounds like that's what's going on here.
So why is that if you're talking about this contextual zoning, why aren't you making that change?
Just from a planning perspective, there are certain parts of the city where not having height limits is appropriate, you know, like when you want to have a height limit in Midtown, when you want to have a height limit in parts of the financial district as well, you know, like those are some tall buildings. We do not want to universally impose height limits. While we have imposed height limits on a majority of medium and high density districts in New York City since the 1980s, the advent of height limits, there are still areas where, even from a planning perspective, where, you know, probably not appropriate to cap those buildings. So I don't know about the particular situation, sorry.
I'm just curious on that question, with the zoning, had this zoning been in effect in the last 25 years, would we have seen anything different on 57th Street? Billionaires Row?
That's a great question. I'm not an architect.
Is that good or bad?
be helpful.
That's a great question. I wanna think about that. That's got a lot of moving parts.
Be curious
That's
to
a-
know the answer on that.
Really good. I mean, obviously, I don't know the answer. I could suggest an answer, but that's a great question.
Also, just when you come back, because I know there are a million other questions, I mean, I'm tremendously interested in the landmarks proposal, which that slide is worse than I thought, and I know George had a question you spoke of earlier, George, where if you had two landmarks in the same, in that proposed slide that you had up on sheet 28, if you had two landmarks, how that would affect the proposal there in terms of the incredible amount of.
That's a great question. So landmark TDRs were created in the late sixties as a way to at least partially compensate landmarks that couldn't achieve undeveloped floor area on their sites in a way that created legal risk. You know, is this a regulatory taking? It went all the way to the Supreme Court. So it's in the last 55 years or so that it's been around, 56 now, I think. There have been like a dozen landmark transfers, like that's it. Because it was one of the first TDR programs, the radius is the tightest of any TDR program in the city. You basically can only go, as you saw in the diagram, to the lot next door to you, or would be if not for an intervening street or intersection. And it takes a full special permit. So the special permit requirement was imposed before ULURP existed, when a special permit was not, was probably like, go to the Board of Estimate and ask nicely or whatever. Now, it's a 2-year process. And because of the process and because of the tight transfer radius, we just haven't seen any outside of like the highest value, highest density parts of the city. So as a way to expand it incrementally, you saw expanding the transfer radius to anywhere on the landmark block or immediately across the street from that block or intersection. We see that as a relatively moderate way to create more opportunities for transfers without even approaching the radius you see for TDR programs and things like South Street Seaport, for that matter. You can go blocks there. Greater East Midtown, you can go over, I don't know, how many, 60 block area or something like that. You could send TDRs, half mile or more away. Theater subdistrict, similar thing. Hudson Yards, similar thing. So landmarks remains pretty tight. But I can tell you, I've had conversations now with like a landmark church in Crown Heights that needs a new roof. They don't have any realistic opportunities under the existing program, but they have a couple opportunities under this in a way that could extend the benefits of landmark TDR to Midtown or non-FIDI projects. Could you take unused development rights from multiple landmarks and put them on a single development site? I think that that's possible under the existing zoning, as long as the receiving site was within the transfer radius of each of those individual landmarks. So we can take a look at, on Zolo, you can look at all the individual landmarks. We can take a closer look on, or you can, on what would be possible with that. But we see that as a good thing. This is intended to support individual landmarks. And so if folks are using landmark TDRs, that's great. If they need any bulk mods on the receiving site, then it has to go through an authorization process through the community board and through the city planning commission. So it's not like there's no review anymore as well. But great question.
All right, we are right at 8 o'clock. I know we could keep going and going and going with this. George, I know you had even more. But we're gonna keep those questions coming between now and our next meeting. Again, this is the beginning of the conversation, so not the end. DCP will be back again next month where we can ask more pointed questions as we get geared up for our resolution. And with any luck, we'll get some additional time out of Chair Garodnick, and then we will be able to really button this up at some point in July. So want to thank you guys for being here from the Department of City Planning. And Ezra, I think you're still with us online. Thanks for hanging out. And thanks.
I'm here. Yeah. John's your best resource. He's fantastic to have.
Absolutely. We'll be delighted to have you back again next month.
Yeah, love to.
Yeah. We'll make the
And we'll have asked questions that will be written and then.
Well, yeah, so the goal is, that the way I'm envisioning this will be more of an Excel spreadsheet where we'll have questions on there on a rolling basis, and Matt and Ezra can answer them on a rolling basis as well. And then all the committee members will have access to them, so that we don't have to wait to see them all answered at one point in time, right? We can just keep this conversation going, electronically, for the next, however many days. But then obviously we have to make sure those questions are publicly available, and we have to, under our open meeting laws requirements, and we have to make sure that we're debating and discussing the actual resolution of it.
But we'll be seeing the response of city planning to these questions prior to the next meeting,
That,
correct?
that would be the goal.
Yes, okay, I got it.
That would be the goal, just the sooner the better, and that's, for rolling as well. That makes it helpful.
And with that, folks, we're adjourned. I'm gonna stop the recording.
That's terrific, very helpful. This is a block.